Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you my labor and delivery story. This was a super requested video. I did have my baby, if you guys didn't know. I haven't filmed in a couple of weeks, and that's just because I've been crazy busy just adjusting and just taking care of her and whatnot. So kind of spending time with just the close-knitted family and just getting everything adjusted. But everything's going really well. I thought that I would share my story because so many of you requested it, and I remember when I was pregnant, I watched at least 100 of these videos. They were super helpful, kind of gives you an idea of like what's going to go on, and just everybody's story is different, and I thought it was really interesting when I was pregnant to hear everybody's different stories. So I figured that I would film my own, and she is sleeping behind me, so if you hear any kind of baby noises or something, that's just because she's napping behind me, and she's just a little sleepy girl. So it's been a couple weeks since I filmed. I think 2 weeks since my birthday glam makeup tutorial, and that's just crazy because I was pregnant in that video. And then 2 weeks later, pretty much 2 weeks, or like a week later, I had her. So super crazy, and it's just funny because I had no idea in that video that I was going to have her anytime soon, and then I did. So yeah. But anyways, let's get on to this labor and delivery story because it may be a long video. So I'm going to check the dates just to give you guys an exact on everything that kind of went down. So she was born October 1st, which is great and amazing. She came on her due date, which is like super rare. The doctors said like that never, hardly ever happens for a baby to actually come on their due date, and she did. So she was ready to come on that exact day, but I actually started having labor contractions on the 29th. So the month of September goes till the 30th. So the 29th in the morning time, or the 29th, early morning, and the 30th, I was having labor contractions. Since she was my first, I had no clue what a contraction felt like. I had no idea like if it was the real thing or if it was just like false labor contractions or if it was my like things starting to like prepare. Little did I know it was things starting to prepare. So the 29th, I was like in like some pain, and it was like discomfort, and I had never felt it before, but it wasn't like totally unbearable. It did really suck, but it wasn't like I was in tears or anything. And so I had heard that like you would be doubled over in pain and like agony if it was real labor contractions. So I didn't want to risk it. So I went in, I dealt with those from, I think it was like 1 in the morning until, I think we went in at 11, because we were going to get Jordan that day. So because it was a Friday. So yeah, so we went in around 11 on that Friday, and they would just come and go. I would try to time them. They would be like I know they're supposed to be every 2 to 3 minutes, but they were, I think, like some were every 2 to 3 minutes, then it would range to like every 5 minutes, then some would be like every 10 minutes. And so they were really like inconsistent, but they were happening. And so we went into the doctors and the labor and delivery room, and they had tested me and they checked how dilated I was, and I was half a centimeter. So I was really discouraged because I'm like, oh my God, this sucks. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything with those contractions. So I was like, okay, well, this is just what I'm going to have to deal with until I get further along. So later, they sent us home, and then later on that night, I was having them more frequent and more painful, but I'm like, okay, I was only half a centimeter, so I really need to wait this out. And they were like, okay, you really need to time them and just make sure that they're 2 to 3 minutes and like they're unbearable. So I'm like, okay. The next day, I stayed up that whole night on the 29th. After they had sent us home, I went to bed at 10, got no sleep whatsoever. I was up all night timing contractions. It was like the worst thing possible. And then on the 30th, which was a Saturday, we had got Jordan and everything, and we had prepared everybody like, okay, you may need to take him, like this could be happening soon. My due date was like the next day, so it was just kind of a lot going on. And they kept getting stronger and stronger on the 30th. And so I dealt with them the entire morning on the 30th. And then around like 3 o'clock, I'm like, okay, I've been timing these all night. This is like getting intense now. I'm getting really uncomfortable. I cannot sleep. Like if she comes, I'm going to be exhausted because I've literally been up 24 hours straight with no sleep. I've never done that my whole life, and I was literally up for a straight 24 hours. Like not even like a lick of sleep, not even for a minute. That's how bad that the contractions just kept me up, because I would kind of doze off, and like a minute later they would, oh, she's having a dream. Sometimes she wakes up and like gets sad and she has like dreams. They were really bad. I got no sleep. I would doze off, and then like literally a minute into it, there comes a contraction again. So no sleep. I went in on the 30th, which was that Saturday, around the evening time, because I'm like, okay, I timed them all day. I'm pretty sure that I've progressed a little bit. And what I was scared of was that I was going to progress too much and not be able to get the epidural. My plan was to have the epidural because I felt like I knew I could do it natural, but I wanted the epidural so I could get some sort of like comfort and some sort of sleep, because I knew that I was not going to be able to sleep at all before I had her. And if I didn't get the epidural, I was going to be exhausted while pushing, and it was just going to be really, really just not a good experience if I didn't have one. If I was able to get sleep and I didn't labor the day before like I was, then I probably would have done it natural. But since I wasn't able to get any sleep whatsoever, I was like, okay, my plan, I really wanted to get that so I can get a little bit of rest. So went in for the second time to labor and delivery, and I was like, okay, this is getting like really bad. And I was much different. The first time I went in, the nurse was like, you're not in labor. You're not in active labor. There's no way. You're smiling. You're this, like you look great. And so I was like, okay. Oh yeah. And the first time we had went into labor and delivery, on that Friday, we actually walked the whole hospital for an hour to see if I would progress any, and I didn't. So that Saturday when I went in, I knew I wasn't going to stay. I was like, okay, I'm just praying that I like progressed a little bit, because they admit you into the hospital at 4 centimeters. So I went in, I checked. This time I was way different looking. The nurse was like, okay, you may be in active labor just by the way that you look right now. And I'm like, okay, thanks. I know I look like crap, but whatever. She was like, yeah, you look more miserable than you were before. Like there's no happiness on your face right now. So that's kind of how they tell. It's just like if you walk in and you're like, I think I'm in active labor. Ow, I'm having a contraction. That's kind of how I was before. I was literally like doubling over, kind of having tears in my eyes, like, oh God, this might be it. So they checked me, and I think I was a 2 by then. And I was super discouraged because they don't admit you till 4, like I said. And I was like, oh my God, like this is so bad. Like you're just supposed to go home and just deal with these contractions that are so terrible, and you can't do anything about them. I mean, you can't sleep, you can't do anything. So they were like, pretty much, but what we can do for you is give you a morphine shot, and hopefully you can get a little bit of sleep at home because it's more comfortable for you there. And then, it'll take a little bit of the contraction pain away, and you should be able to get rest. And so I'm like, okay. And they said you could stay in the hospital and try and like wait it out here, or you can have the shot and go home and try and rest. So that's what I did. I got the morphine shot, and I was like, okay, hopefully this works. So I went home, I laid down, and nothing. I was still in excruciating pain. The morphine shot did nothing for me, and it was not happening for me. So I waited around the house for several hours after the morphine shot, and I was just walking around, breathing through the contractions, just trying to forget about it, watching shows, bouncing on my ball. I was trying to watch YouTube videos, like doing everything that I could possibly do to try and just forget about these contractions, but they were worsening. I was timing them, and they were strictly 2 to 3 minutes at this point. I was at home for several hours. We had left the hospital, I think we went in that evening, I think. I don't remember the exact time. Like, I cannot deal with it any longer. Like, I was starting to get pissed. So I'm like, no, like they have to admit me now. And so I went in, and they checked how dilated I was, and I was 6.5. So I had waited pretty much labored on my own until 6.5 centimeters. So I was super excited by that point because I'm like, okay, I need to sleep. Please give me the epidural. I don't know how fast I'm going to progress from this point on, because I was at home literally from 2 and I went to 6.5. So it was like pretty quick within that time frame. And I was like, okay, I just need the epidural so I can get some sort of rest, so I have some energy to push. So the lady was like, okay, well, we can call in. And I was glad that I asked at that point because the anesthesiologist that does the epidurals, I think they only have one on call for each day. And, he has to prepare things, he has to get things ready. And, he takes about like an hour. He didn't really take that long, but she said he could take up an hour to get to the room. And he actually only took 25 minutes. Within that 25-minute time frame from when he came, I was already at a 7. So I was 7 centimeters dilated. Mind you, I'm pretty sure if you had a baby, you know this, but once you're at 10, it's time to go. So he gave me the epidural at 7 centimeters, and I was pretty proud of myself because I labored 7 centimeters by myself without any pain medication. Mind you, the morphine shot in my butt did not work. So I was like, okay, I'm pretty proud of myself because I dealt with this excruciating pain till 7. So I was like, I'm almost at 10. Like, how much worse can it really get from that point on to 10? I was almost like, I wanna just go natural. But then I was like, who knows how long I'm gonna be pushing. I need to sleep to get some sort of energy. And I hadn't ate anything either, so they got me on IVs pretty quickly. So then once I had the epidural, which wasn't really bad actually. I heard like a lot of horror stories about the epidural, and for me it happened really quick. It was kind of like a little bee sting, like a quick little bee sting in your back, and then you just put it in there. I didn't move at all, so it didn't make me like move at all. If that, like when something pokes you and like you have to bend over like this, it didn't make me like jump. So I've heard a lot of people like they jumped or like they kind of like quivered, and that didn't happen for me, but it could be different for everybody. It just kind of was like a little shot. And then it did feel a little bit uncomfortable. Like once he put the actual like stuff in, you can kind of feel it, and that felt a little weird, the liquid or whatever. But once you're going through that pain, you don't really care. You're like, do anything to me and get this pain away. So funny thing that I want to share about that too is that he told me that my back is crooked, like my spine, my back, whatever. I never knew that, and he's like, okay, well, you need to be extra still, like more still than anything, because your back is crooked, so you need to do this right. And I'm like, okay, so what does that mean? Like, I was kind of thinking, okay, it's not gonna work. Like, it's not going to work on one side. It's going to work on like, it's not going to work on both sides. I'm going to still feel a little bit of these contractions. And so I was kind of right, because once he was done, I still felt amazing. But then when I laid back down, I had still felt like this pain in my lower back on my left side. And it was bearable, but I was still feeling a little bit of the contractions. Like when one would come, I'm like, oh, I can still kind of feel it. But it was not like it was before. So I wasn't that, oh, my headband's falling off. I'm just going to put it back in while I'm talking. It wasn't like it was before. So I wasn't like, freaking out about that it wasn't working on one side. And so he said I could keep pressing the button. They give you like a button and it gives you more of the medicine. And I didn't really want to do that for some reason. So I didn't really press the button too many times. But when I did start feeling it more and more, I did press it. And yeah, but I didn't overdo it or anything. I just kind of was like, this isn't as bad as it was, so I don't need to keep pressing it. But yeah, so it didn't actually work completely on the left side. And I was going through back labor. So I don't know if you guys know what that is. But if you guys have gone through that, it's one of the worst things. So from that whole entire like 7 centimeters that I labored by myself, it was contractions and back labor. So I was like, oh God, this is not very fun. But once I got the epidural, it was very bearable. I actually slept for, I would say, a solid 40 minutes. And then they checked me at 40 minutes after like I woke up, and it was like 40 minutes. And she checked me and she's like, oh, and it was just the nurses. And she was like, oh my God, you need to start pushing right now. And I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, you need to start like pushing. Like it's time. Like I see her head. And I'm like, okay. So I was like, yeah, I kind of feel like the need to push. And it's kind of weird because you like feel like you want to push. Like it's like a sensation that like, you know, like you're like, okay, it's time for me to push. So I was like, yeah, I do want to push. Like, can I push right now? Like, I'm ready. And then she's like, well, I need to go get the doctor. Like, this is like seriously happening right now. And I'm like, okay. So she's like, oh my God, like she has a lot of hair. And she's like, I hope you brought bows because she has a lot of hair. And I'm like, really? She has a lot of hair? Like, that's crazy because PJ didn't have a lot of hair when he was a baby and I didn't really have that much. I did have some, but not as much as Adriana. So I don't know where she got that from. Probably my mom's side because she's Spanish, or my dad. My dad has a lot of like dark hair in his side. I don't know where I got my blonde, but it was just super weird. So she's like, oh yeah, you can feel it if you want. And so I felt it and I was like, oh my God, she does have a lot of hair. And then the doctor came in and I had an amazing doctor. It was a doctor that I actually wanted and she was the one on call. So I was super stoked about that. I had all these amazing nurses that I really liked that I had met already before. And so everything just worked out really, really great. And then once the doctor came in, she's like, okay, push. And so I pushed one time and she's like, oh my God, she's like already almost here. And I'm like, what, after one? Like, oh my God. And then I pushed again and then they're like, okay, breathe and make this a really good one. And so I pushed again and then she's like, one more time. And then she was here. So that was that. And she was born at 4:59 p.m. on October 1st, which was her due date. Yeah, after just a couple of pushes and all that, she was here. It happened so flippin' fast. I actually really had an amazing labor and delivery. I feel like besides the laboring with the contractions, I think that's the most like sucky part. Laboring for the 48 hours with no sleep and just the excruciating pain that I was dealing with, that was the worst part. But once I actually got to the hospital, got the epidural and everything, it was so quick and so easy. Like literally I thought I was going to be pushing for hours because the lady had said, you know, with your first baby you could be pushing up to 3 hours long. So that kind of was like, okay, maybe I should prepare myself. But it didn't happen for me. I literally pushed a couple of times and she was out. So I feel like I got really lucky at that point and I literally was pushing for like 5 minutes. So it was pretty amazing at that point. And I feel like I was like, okay, well, this is good because I had a very easy delivery, but the laboring part was challenging. So that was the only thing, but that was it. And then we had testing. So we stayed for a full 24 hours in the hospital. They wanted us to stay, just an extra, like you can stay as long as you want, but me and PJ were like really ready to get out of the hospital and kind of just like get used to things at home and, you know, get her used to being here and like show her her new house. And it's just a little bit, we're not really like hospital people. We would rather like be at home, kind of have our stuff here and like sleep in our own bed and like get her like on her routine. So we decided to go home after the 24 hours, that everything was tested great. And yeah, they like kept telling me like how perfect she was. And like they kept using the word perfect, which me and PJ keep saying, like we kept saying that like, oh my God, that's really good. Like they kept using that word. They're like, oh my God, she's just perfect. She came on her due date. She, you know, perfect size, perfect this, perfect that. And it just made me feel really good because they're like perfect delivery, easy delivery, and just, it was really awesome. So I couldn't be more grateful and thankful for like my guardian angels and like God for giving me such an amazing and healthy delivery. I could literally do it again. It's just the craziest thing. Like you kind of forget about the pain. Like you don't totally forget about it. You're like, okay, that was really, really bad. I don't want to go through that again. But you almost would because of like the blessing that came from it. It's the craziest feeling in the world. And I feel like you can only, I don't know, you can only like do it and like feel that way if you've gone through it before. And that's why people have so many kids, you know, like people have 2, 3, 4, 6, 10 kids, and they deal with all that pain and everything because it's so worth it in the end. So yeah, that was my labor and delivery story. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys want any other like postpartum videos or, you know, essentials for after baby or like more baby videos, let me know down below. I don't want to like overpower with baby videos because I know that this was like my beauty and lifestyle channel, but if you guys are interested in that, then just let me know by liking this video and commenting down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.